the objective is to just create instance, Informix instance. The installation is already complete here. The objective is just creation of an instance. So I logged into that mission here, logged into that box. So let me.
Ravi, can you increase font size?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Possible? Okay.
So I'm logging in. After the login, I'll increase. I'm logging in as Informix and the associated password. If you look at the other day, we have installed, we have copied the product into mount storage. I'm sorry, not here, right? Mount Informix. We got a tar file. We have extracted the tar file here. After we extract the tar file, we got the tar file in the same directory. The associated tar files here in the same directory. So one important thing we got was IDS underscore install. Now what we did was we have run this IDS underscore install and we installed the Informix into mount Informix IDS 121 directory. So this is where I have all the Informix installation files. Under mount Informix, what I got is I got a tar file. I extracted the tar file, and after the extraction I got this IDS underscore install. I installed this IDS in this directory. After this directory installation, after this IDS underscore install is complete, what I have done is I have set some environment here. So the next step I did was I created an instance. As part of this instance creation, the first step is I have set an environment. I think there are the steps here that we followed the other day. Now these are the steps we did. We logged in as a root and we have created these directories. At a workplace in your client environment, we might not have a root user ID and password, so we have to work with Unix team for this. Then I created two users, one group Informix and another user as Informix in the same group. Then I change the password. Then I change the ownership of this directory. Then I have added this port number. So I have extracted and changed the display parameters, then installed. So these are the options I have chosen during the install. Now during the install, one important option we choose was don't create an instance. So it by default creates an instance and we choose the don't create an instance. It's option 2. So once the installation is complete, our next step is creation of an instance. Right? But please note that installation proceeds with root. Informix does the instance creation. So the next thing I need to do is I need to switch to Informix. So let me follow these steps from now. You're able to see the screen okay, right? The font and everything.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm logging into that box. Now I'm going to CD mount storage. The other day we created an instance for one, right? So today what we do is we create instance for the second instance. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to touch root dbs dot root dbs. So the first thing is, okay, let's identify the instance name. So let's say I give IDS13 as the instance name. So root dbs13.1. Similarly, online13.log. I'll just blindly follow this, but just the naming convention. So when I say ls-ltr, now I change mode 660 online13.log to dbs13.log. 13.1. Now what is this online.log has? This has your instance runtime information, in the sense whenever there is any problem on the instance, it will write it in this message log. This is kind of an alert log. This is the first log that we come and look at if someone reports any problem about our Informix instance. What is this root dbs13.1? This is the first file. This is where you have all your metadata. What is metadata? Data about data. In the sense all your system important stuff. So this file is so important for your instance start. So we are creating these two files in one directory under mount storage. Right. Now the next step is creating the environment. Here we created environment for IDS12. We create now environment for IDS13. I'm opening an VI file. I'm pressing I and I'll just copy this environment. So Informix directory is same. This is where we have our product installed. But what I want my Informix instance name is IDS13. This is our Informix. This is a little confusing. We call it as Informix server, but this is a database server. This you cannot get confused with the OS box. So the Informix server is IDS13. On config is onconfig.ids13. What is this on config? This on config has all your parameters. These are the parameters that are needed for your database instance creation. One example parameter is how much memory to give, how much this and how much that. So that information is there. Okay. Now this Informix SQL host has that mapping between your instance name and port number. So these are all the important parameters. These 8 parameters. What is your Informix directory? That says where is your product installed. how we are going to access this product through this instance. Where is this instance configuration information? That's here. The Informix SQL host. This talks about communication. SQL host talks about communication. Path. This talks about executables. Then you have a LD library path. This talks about libraries. These are two needed for setting term and term cap. Now I write and quit. The next step I'll do is I'll source this environment saying the .env.ids13. So once I do that, when I say onstat minus, it says that shared memory not initialized for IDS13. That is, my instance is either down or I did not create the instance yet. So my instance Informix server is IDS13, which is not up yet. Now the next thing I need to do is I'll just follow these steps one after another. Next step is, if you look at this cat env.ids13, I have something called Informix server and onConfig. Now I'll go ahead and create this file first. I'll go ahead and create this file first. For that I need to first go to my Informix dir, that is this file. Then I go to cd etc. By default with the installation you get something called onconfig.std. So I copy this onconfig.std to onconfig.ids13, right? So now I'll open this new file that I copied just now and I modify the below environment or parameter files. The first one I need to modify is root path. So root path, I will make sure it points to mount storage root dbs 13.1. sh path, I modify it to mount storage online 13.log. You remember these are the two files that we created at the starting, root path and message path. Tape dev, I'll put it to null. Ltape dev, I put it to null. Then the next one I modify is db server name. DB server name is IDS13, and I'll also modify the server number. I have another instance already running, right? That instance already has a server number 0. So I'll modify this to 1.
So DB server name is the instance name.
Yes, that is true. DB server name is our instance name. So this server number 0 and 1 it uses to allocate some shared memory. So in a previous, I have already created an instance the other day here, right? That has a server number as 0. Now I am having a server number here for 1. You can have it like 100 as well. Any number that should be unique on this box. Yep, sorry, it can have only from 0 to 255. So the other parameter I need to modify is log file. So log files, so let's put it as 12 as told here. So these are the parameters we need to modify this to this on config file. Now if you look at the next step talks about copying SQL host file. But if you see, I already have an SQL host file here because of the other instance. I'll just open the same file and I'll add one line here. IDS13, IDS13 port. Now I need to add this IDS13 port in etc services. For that I'll switch to root. I'll go to etc services file, IDS13 port, P4552 TCP. Just a comment, port for IDS13 instance. 34552. Right? I'll exit. Now this SQL host work is also done. Now I did all the setup. If you look at, I'll go to mount storage. I have two env files here, env IDS12 and env IDS13. This is for the other instance that we created other day. If I source this environment and if I say all stat minus, the instance is up and running from 4 days. This is for IDS 1-1. Whereas if I source this env.ids13, it says shared memory not initialized for IDS13 because this is the instance that we are creating right now. So we did all the setup, right? If you look at cat env.ids13, we have Informix dir, we have on config file, we have Informix SQL host, right? Look at the size, root dbs.13.1 is 0, but after we initialize it, it will become something like this. Right. Informix SQL host also has an entry. The SQL host file can be shared between multiple instances, but not on config file. The SQL host file can be shared between multiple instances, but not on config file. Now the next step I have here is, after I set the environment, let me do this one more time. All I got to do is on init minus I y p, like I said here. This is only for the first time. -I, the initialization will happen only for the first time because I'm creating the instance for the first time. If you see this, verbose output complete mode is 5. That's a very good sign. Your instance is started. Started from 1 minute 16 seconds. So how do you confirm that everything is okay? You go to DB access tool and go to database section, and if you click on select, you should be able to see 4 databases. Why I got only 3? Select again. Now why I got only 3? So there must be something wrong. So if you feel something suspicious, the first place to look at is your message file. Your message file. Where is your message file located? It's on mount storage online 13.log. This is the file. If you go to VI and go to shift end, so it has all the logs. I came to the end. So it says that sysadmin database is built successfully. Yeah, I think it should be fine. It's building the database. It's halfway through the process. Sysmaster, sysutils, sysuser, and sysadmin. If I go to DB access, database, select, yeah, you should be able to see 4 databases. These are the 4 databases that you get with installation. Sorry, I mean initialization. They are running at IDS 13, IDS 13, and IDS 13. Any questions till now, Ravi?
Yeah. So what are the privileges that will be given to the Informix? I mean, so the instance will be created by the root, right? So we are logging into Informix, then, so what's happening actually?
Right, so let me clarify that one more time. What is the root responsibility is? Root creates Informix user, does the installation, does the copy, extract, and installation. Whereas once this installation is complete, Informix picks up. Now Informix does instance creation. So this is the responsibility matrix. Now what is Informix does here is creates necessary spaces, right? Online .log root DBS stuff, and does the instance creation. Is this what you're asking, Ravi?
So how come Informix user can be, do this?
Yeah, because that's the Informix product, right? It's built in the product that only Informix user can do this. Informix is a super user. That is why it is required for root to create that Informix user.
So it should be only the Informix user, or any other Informix 1, 2, 3 can be done these things?
It's an Informix user only.
Okay.
Right. It should be Informix and Informix. It looks for Informix user and Informix group. That's it. Okay. Any other questions, Saviteja? What happens here is the moment I log in, let's say if I open a duplicate session, if I log in as an Informix, I have two environments. If I go to CD mount storage, it's up to me. I can set up any environment. Then I see the environment that's running from 4 days. Then I see the environment running from 6 minutes. So what we do is, if we have like a couple of environments like this, we add it into this .bash profile. We go to set onto environment. Right, so from next moment onwards, if I open a duplicate session and log in, directly at the environment login time itself, I'll see this message. Now if I want to set this environment, I simply copy and paste. I think there's a mistake here. Bash profile. What is this dot profile file? You have an idea on this? Ravi? You know what is
Yeah.
this? You know what is this dot bash underscore profile?
No.
Right. In Unix or Linux environments, what happens is, by default you log in, whatever you write in this dot bash profile is executed. Each user has its own bash underscore profile. If you look at here, each user has its own, it's like a login script. So whatever I write it here, what did I write it here? I write an echo statements. What is an echo statement? Echo is like a display statement on the screen. Right. So the echo statement is like a display statement. We are saying, we are giving an option to user that at a login, if I just a flexibility. Whatever I write it in this dot bash underscore profile is executed. If I have multiple Informix environments, and if I can't set all of them at once, right?
In one, how many instances we can create in one database?
You mean
Sorry,
how many we can initialize, create instances in one setup, right?
Yeah.
There is no limit. There is no limit. Only your infrastructure is the limit.
Oh, okay.
Right. So you get more clarity once you start doing this setup. Okay. In a nutshell, at a high level, what we have done so far is these are the steps we have done.
So Ravi, previously when we are giving the number for service number, it should be from 0 to 255, right? So when creating instances, will there be any problem, or we can use a same number?
Yes, server number. That's not a service number. That's a server number. So 0 to 255 means you can have 255 instances on a single box. So that's huge. The maximum I have seen in a single instance is 6 or 7, not more than that.
Okay.
That's okay. Right. Like if you are saying that 255, you'll use all 255 only if you have all 255 instances. Right. So that's very, very, very rare. You can't have 255 instances. You can, but in realistic scenario, you don't have it. Right. That won't be a challenge.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you look at here, so let me set this ID as 13. So the command here is onStat space minus. If you look at so far, I introduced you to these commands. OnStat space minus, onInt hyphen IYV, onMode DV access, onStat space minus M. This is like a message or alert log. DB access is a tool to access databases. OnInit to initialize Informix instance. To check instance status. Right. So we'll talk about these commands. So far we are using only few options. We'll talk about the remaining options in the next classes. But in the next, now what I would like to talk right now is how do I switch between various Informix instance operational modes. If you look at when I say onStat space minus, you can ignore this evaluation license warning. It says that Informix server version 12.10, which is online from 14 minutes. So far consumed this much shared memory. Right. Online. Now what other options or what other states my Informix instance can be in? Right? Let me explain you that. We also call Informix as IDS, Informix Dynamic Server. Informix Dynamic Server has 4 principal modes of operation. It can be in 4 different states. The one that we have seen so far is online and offline. Online, users can connect with the database server and perform all database activities. This is normal operating mode of the database server. Offline. When the database server is not running, that means no shared memory is allocated. The third operating mode we have is a quiescent mode. Only administrators can access the database server to perform maintenance functions that do not involve the execution of SQL and DDL statements. Only administrators can access the database server. What is the fourth mode we have? Administrative or single. This option allows the Informix user to perform all functions, including the issuance of SQL and DDL commands. If you look at the quiescent, only administrators. Here, only the single user, that's the Informix user only. But here administrators can be like your Informix user, you can have another user as an administrator. I can decide, I can put Praviteza as an administrator for Informix, so then he also can log in. This option allows the Informix user to all functions including the issuance of SQL and DDL commands. The -J space -U option enables the DBSA database system administrator to designate specific users, in addition to the Informix user to access the database server. Now these are all the modes. You can move from offline to online. In middle you can go to quiescent, and in middle you can go to single user. Any questions on this slide?
No.
Okay. Online, offline, quiescent, administrative or single mode. So this quiescent is something like you apply some patches, some kind of a maintenance functions. Under single mode, anyone with -U, anyone who designated as an administrator can access it. The next important thing to know here is how do you switch between these modes? How do you switch between these important modes? So right now we are in an online state. From online, if you want to move to offline, offline means no database connections are allowed, nothing that you can do. How do you switch between them? Is a command called onmode space -KUY. Onmode -KY, or just you can simply say onmode -K. The moment you say onmode space -K, so you got this message that this will take Informix server offline. Do you wish to continue? Yes, I would like to continue. So it says that if there are any user threads that are going to be killed. There are no users right now connected, so it says that 0 user threads killed. Do you wish to continue? Yes. Now when you say onstat space minus, the message you see is shared memory not initialized for Informix server IDS 13. Right. Right. Now let's switch between other modes as well. Right now we are in offline mode. From offline, how do you come to online mode? On unit space -v. Now I am in offline mode. How do you come to online mode? On unit space -v. V stands for verbose. Now when I say now on stat space minus, I should be able to see server state in a online. That means we are right now in a online state here. Now if there is ever a need to switch to offline, again these commands, one of these commands. Now let me show you one more thing. I'll open a duplicate session. I'll set this environment. Now I go to DB access. I select one of the databases, Sysmaster, and I'll just leave that session like that. Now what I do here is I'll try to bring this down on mode -k. Same thing, we wish to continue, yes. Now you see it says that there are 1 user threads that will be killed. In the previous scenario, it showed there are only 0 user threads. Now it showed there will be 1 user thread because this is a user thread. Whenever we initiate a connection to the database server, it's a thread. Informix is a thread-based architecture. So yes, I'm okay to kill this user thread. Now when you say on stat space minus, not initialized. Now if I see this, it says that network connection is broken. Now I exit from here. Right. So any questions on this online to offline and offline to online switch?
You are using on mode -KUY, right? What is U then? When we are switching to online to offline mode,
Right.
have been used.
Okay, let me show you that. So when I say on it -v, it will bring up the instance. On stat minus. Now in the other terminal, what I say here is DB access. I go to database, I go to select, and I select the Sis Master. Now this is one user thread. Now in the previous scenario, which I said on mode -k. If I say KUY, it will ask me nothing. Y means by default say yes to everything. U means kill all user threads itself. I don't want you to give me the confirmation.
Okay.
Right. How can I see all the options available with the command? For example, on mode, when you say minus and go to more, you can see all the options here. So far what we are using is we are using an option called K, shut down completely. And U, change to QSend mode and kill all the attached sessions. So we are saying that don't require confirmation, take it by default as a confirmation when you say Y. Right. Like that, you can bring your database to various intermediate stages. Between online and offline, you have something called QSENT or singular admin mode. Now let me bring my database to QSENT mode. In a QSENT mode, I have an option to bring it gracefully or immediately. When I bring it to gracefully, for example, if I am saying that on mode minus yes, yeah, shared memory not initialized. So I connected, one thread is connected here. Now the next step for me is to bring it to QSENT mode. It's a single user mode where we can do some maintenance. Right, when I say on mode space minus yes. Graceful. As the name says that it will wait, graceful. It will wait for all user connections to terminate. If I don't use here minus u option, what it does here is it will terminate, sorry, it will wait for all the user sessions to complete. Then why did it complete? Oh yeah, it completed because this session is from the Informix user itself. Right. When you say on start space minus, oh yeah. So it still says that it's shutting down, but it's not actually shut it down. Right? Why? Because this user is still connected. Till this user is connected, it will stay like that only. If I exit from this session, if I say on start minus, then it will quickly go to QSENT. So the word itself says it, graceful. Means it will wait. I mean, it won't accept other connections, but it won't terminate the existing connections. That's a graceful. It won't terminate the existing connections. Whereas if I say immediate on mode space minus, it will kill all stuff. What is the difference between QSENT and singular admin? QSENT means it's not allowed, it's not down, but you won't be allowed to do any SQL. So for example, right now we are in a QSENT mode. If I am trying to go to DB access, database, select, it says that no connections are allowed in QSENT mode. It says no connections are allowed in QSENT mode. And it also gives an error number here, 27002. If you want to find out more information about those errors, there is a command called find error and just give the error number, 27002. Says that you are attempting to connect to a database server that is in a QSENT mode. It most of the time gives the correct reason. We don't have to go to Google and search for the errors. The error information is available here only inbuilt. Now this is your first L1 tasks, one of the L1 tasks, initial L1 tasks you do as a Informix DBA. So we also call it as a bouncing an instance, bounce. Switch between various modes, online and offline or offline to online. This is called as bounce. So the terminology is, so sometimes when you attend these CCG calls, change control calls, they say that when you switch between, when you want to do something, will it require bounce? Or there is a downtime. Indirectly, there is a downtime. So bounce is nothing but moving between online to offline and coming back to online. This is very important. This is one of the basic L1 tasks. Right. Any questions?
No.
Now the next concept we have is explanation on those default databases. We know that database is nothing but a repository of data. But what happens when you install IDS 12.1 is you get 4 default databases. What are they? Sysmaster, sysutils, sysadmin, and sysuser. How we can see that? Let me switch to multi-user mode. When you say DB access, database, select, you see these 4 databases here. Now what are these databases? Why there are 4 databases? Why can't it be one database that is holding all the information? We need to understand about these databases individually. The first database is Sis Master Database. A Sis Master database for every instance keeps track of information about the database server. Sysmaster is nothing but system catalog. It's a metadata. This is the so crucial database, very crucial database. The database server or instance creates the Sysmaster database when it initializes the disk space. When you initialize, how do you initialize? Using a command called on init-i. It's a very dangerous command, okay? It initializes everything. You are not allowed to run it as and when you require. No. Only pretty much the first time when you initialize the instance. The database server creates the Sysmaster database when it initializes disk space. The database server creates the database with unbuffered logging. We haven't spoken on this logging concept, but for now remember it as unbuffered logging. You cannot drop the database or any of the tables in it, and you cannot turn logging off. This is a type of a logging which is called unbuffered logging. We have 3 types of loggings: buffered, unbuffered, and ANSI mode. So in this, by default it chooses unbuffered, and you have no option to turn this off, as well as you have no option to drop this database or drop any tables. If you are playing that way, it might crash your Informix instance. You might need instance or media recovery to restore the database. The Sysmaster database contains the system monitoring interface tables. These are also called as SMI tables. The SMI tables provide information about the state of the database server. You can query these tables to identify processing bottlenecks, determine resource usage, track sessions or database server activity, and so on. Let me show you those tables. If you select the Sysmaster database, if you exit from this database screen, and if you go to table, if you go to info, you can see bunch of tables here. All these tables pretty much starts with SYS. When I exit from here and when I say onstat space minus, this is a command that gets me the server status. Indirectly in the backend it runs an SQL query and gets the data from those SMI tables, system monitoring interface tables, which gets updated with instance operation every minute or every second. Now who creates those tables? When you initialize for the first time, there is a script called build SMI script inside your Informix dir. This script builds the database and the tables that support SMI when we first initialize instance. The database server requires approximately 1750 free pages of logical log space to build the Sysmaster database. You remember one of the parameters I have changed here was log files from 6 to 12. You'll understand this why I did that in a logging concept. For now, remember this as it requires some logical log space. There is something called physical log and logical log. It requires logical log. After this build SMI is complete, it calls buildutil.sh. This script builds sysutils database. The next database it builds. If it fails, the database server creates an output file in the temp directory. The output file is buildutil.processid on Unix and buildutil.out on Windows. Let me show you this build SMI file. Inside your Informix dir etc. This is a script. If you vi this script, it's a 146 lines. It calls the subscripts and it does. Its description says that shell script to build Sysmaster database. Right. This is a script it calls. It should be calling an SQL file here. It's calling this sysmaster.sql. To build various tables, associated tables for the Sysmaster database. Now it also calls as buildutil.sh. It also calls buildutil.sh, which builds this sysutils database. What is this sysutils database? This is an administrative database that has tables for onbar. So onbar is one of the backup solutions in Informix. We are not there yet. Onbar and ontape, there are two types of backup solutions. Various sysutils tables are which are like bar underscore action, instance. So these are the tables that gets updated whenever we take backups and restores using onbar option. When I say DB access, database, select, if you go to sysutils and if you exit from the screen and go to tables option, if you go to info, you see these 6 tables which are for onbar backup and restore. Similarly, you have other 2 databases such as sysadmin. This is also built. This is a lost database that gets built out of the 4. Contains the tables that contain and organizes scheduler tasks and sensors. So some kind of an administrative stuff it does it here. Right, this database is like a real database in the sense it grows huge. Like you can schedule your jobs and your tasks and it has some sensor stuff. You can build some stuff inside it, right? So this is a real database and it can grow huge, right? So since it takes a huge, it is recommended that you move this out of root DBS to another DB space. What it is saying here is, if you look at your onconfig file, if I go to that root path, this is the file we gave. When I say ls-ltr, this occupied some space inside it. So all these databases, 4 databases were built here within this. Now what it is asking is, it's important for us to move this database out of this root DB, because this has a capacity to grow huge, and how do you move out of it? So after you learn how do you create other DB spaces and all that, you'll understand it. For now, you can just look at these commands. There are simple to execute commands. So the next one I have is a query that talks about how do you switch between database and DB space. Now I'll skip this for now, because we need to understand. I'll explain in the next class what is the DB space I'm talking about. And this fourth database sysuser is used for some third-party authentication. So there are some tools like LDAP and Kerberos, where you don't have to create your users within Informix. They get authenticated remotely or directly kind of authentication, right? So in short, what we are talking about is there are 4 databases that gets created, right? Sysmaster is a crucial one that gets created first. It calls sysutils, then sysuser is created, then sysadmin is created. It's important for us to separate sysadmin from the rest of the storage. That we'll see how in the next class. Now what is the DB spaces I am talking about? You can see that information using onstat space -d. By default it creates a root DB space, and this root DB space so far associated with one chunk. These are all different terminologies that we'll see that in the next class, right? The earlier you have a system set it up, it's better, so that you can do all these along with me, right? Root DB space.
Okay.
Now what we do is, in tomorrow's session, this is what we will do. So we'll create a new DB space, for example Ravi DBS. Then we create a new database, Ravi DB, and we store Ravi DB in Ravi DBS. Right. So far what we have seen is pretty important work. Installation, instance creation, parameters changes, understanding how we switch between various Informix operational modes. They are very crucial, very crucial. I'll stop here for today, and I'll continue on DB space creation in the next class.